Hi everyone, my name is Celso Teixeira and welcome to the first episode of Exploring Styles. This is a series of videos where I'm gonna try to find a better style for a personal project of mine. And the way I'm gonna do it is by sculpting people from YouTube that I really admire. For the first episode I'm picking Ricardo Lino. He's a rollerblader, inline skater. I don't know, there's a million ways of saying that. And he really inspires me. This guy, he's not the best skater out there, but that doesn't stop him from making amazing content and really pushing the sport forward. Anyone who knows me knows that I've been skating my whole life. That's all why I follow this guy, and I really recommend you do because his content is really amazing. And I hope that I can put the same amount of dedication and energy that he puts on his videos on mine, always with a smile on my face as well. If you are fluent in ZBrush, you might have noticed that I'm using different polygroups for different elements of the face and keeping those elements separate. Anything that's extruded from the face I'm keeping separate for now. And I'm using Dynamesh with groups on that allows me to, anytime I recalculate the mesh, those elements don't stick together. Most brushes that I use when sculpting a character are preloaded in ZBrush, but I always load Smooth Stronger when working with Dynamesh because the mesh gets too dense too quickly and I need to polish it better, so it helps. This technique of keeping different elements in different polygroups is not something that I usually do. I'm trying that out for now, and I'm really enjoying it, to be honest. Like it keeps things like the nose crease very crispy. So I'm trying to explore different styles, not really different styles, but just refine my style for a personal project that I have. I feel like a lot of my techniques have landed to a specific style now that's a little bit generic, because I incorporated a lot of things that art directors have requested of me for different projects. And that's not a bad thing. After all, like a good style is always composed of different styles merged together, right? Like you incorporate everything that you like, and that times the amount of experience and talent you have, it turns to something that people call their style. But that's not their style by choice, that's their natural style, right? I'm happy with my natural style. It's gonna keep evolving and I have no control over that, right? But what I'm trying to refine here is a specific style that I'm choosing to create for a project. And by doing one-off sculpts like this, it's gonna allow me to explore this better. I have a tendency, anytime I'm doing something personal, to go a little bit more realistic and with more anatomy, and I think that keeps me from exploring like more unique styles. So for this first one, I'm doing pretty much what I always do, but trying to stylize it a little bit more cartoon than it would normally go. And for each one of those sculpts, I'm gonna try to push like variations of my style in a different way, and see where it lands. And I hope I learn a little bit with each one, and I hope that this is going to result in the best style I can possibly get for my personal project. Even though this is not a tutorial, feel free to leave a comment with questions you might have about my process, and I'll try to get to those on the next video. I think that can help me a lot too. It can help me identify things that I haven't pay attention, and I find that explaining something is the best way of self-analyzing. One thing that I'm noticing on this time lapse, and I quite like them, it's not intentional, I just end up doing that, is I zoom out quite a lot. I believe that I do that so I can see the bigger picture, so I don't focus on the details too much. And I'm actually quite happy to see myself doing that, because it's something that I always tell my students to do. But I can definitely feel by watching that I'm struggling to simplify the face elements a little bit more. I try, see, I'm like pushing the nose and going back multiple times, and I did that with the ears as well. I keep going back and trying to find the right amount of detail for a stylized character to have, like, to feel like the person that it's supposed to look like, but not being overwhelming with the amount of details that takes from the stylization of it. That becomes even harder when the person you're trying to capture is a little bit older. Ricardo is not that old, but he does have some wrinkles, and I don't want to have him with a perfect skin, but at the same time, if you put too many wrinkles, it becomes more realistic, and it starts to land on that uncanny valley where it's like too realistic to be a caricature, and it's too cartoon to be a realistic portrait. I want to stay clear from that. With the teeth, I just created a couple cylinders and sculpted the teeth in. I didn't quite like this approach, but it was the lazy approach. Next time I might do individual teeth, like just sculpt one tooth and copy around and just change one by one. I think that's a much better approach, especially for somebody who's missing a tooth right there. You know, it would make my life easier than actually trying to sculpt that off. Granted, I'm not planning on finishing any of those characters, it's just an exercise, so this will have to do for now. If you're curious, how I did there is then standard brush and move brush to move things around. For the tongue, I just added a sphere and pushed it around a little bit. Sticking to the plan of having different polygroups for different elements of the face. The next, just another cylinder that I got from insert mesh brush. And again, same as everything else with Dynamesh, it keeps it separate so I can work on different elements separate. And for the beard, I have those brushes that I got. I don't quite remember the name of the person who created the brush right now, but I'm gonna leave the link in the description so you can also try them out. This one is pretty much just a curved brush with a box on it, and it does the job really well. They have more hair looking ones, but I wanted to try a more boxy shape for the hair. It didn't quite add the volume that I was expecting, so at some point I Dynameshed this hair, smooth it together a little bit, and do this process again on top of the smoothened hair. I kind of went more simple with the painting of this character. I added a base tone and just start painting around. Anytime I'm doing skin, for most things in ZBrush, to be honest, I start sculpting with the material matte cap gray, and that I take most of the way there with that material until I start coloring. And if it's a human, I always use the skin shader, but you might have noticed that I was messing around with the settings of the shader a little bit, and I didn't do much. All I do is lower the specular, I think is set to 17 by default, and then lower to somewhere around 10, so it's a little bit more matte. And I turn on the wax preview to around like 20 to 30, and I use the toy plastic for the eyes, toy plastic material, just so it's more glossy. Even when I add a fake specular, I just want like a better white. When I sculpt the eyes, I usually do this technique ever since I saw a marble sculpture's eyes up close. It's very fascinating how they get this feeling of a realistic eye by carving the cornea inside, so it casts the shadow in a similar way to what we usually see on eyes. and the marble sculpture also had a fake specular. Just a tiny sphere at the right up corner of the eye, and from a distance that catches the light and looks like a highlight on the eye. So I've been doing that technique ever since. And all I do to get the volume inside is push it with the move brush, but I turn the fall off of the brush very low, so the brush becomes pretty sharp. And here we go. I was mentioning before, I data meshed the beer and added the particles. Added the insert mesh brush again on top of this, and I think it looks much better than I was looking before. This way of adding the insert mesh brush all at once is usually the way I go about. So I create curves using the topology brush, and then when I get the hairbrush I just tap one of the curves and all curves become the hairbrush that I was trying to do. This way, if I don't go this way, if I do one by one, I end up having to apply the brush multiple times, and that can be a little bit annoying because sometimes you start drawing one hair and that becomes a continuation of the one you did before, and that's not optimal. So back to coloring, and I always struggle with lips for some reason. I never know like the right shade for the lips. I always start too bright and too saturated, and then I zoom out to see what I did, and I keep fixing, adding skin tones on top. Turns out being okay, but one day I will learn. So right there I was applying ambient occlusion masking. I think I started with cavity first, and cavity sometimes is really helpful, but in this case I didn't like the result, so I double backed and just applied occlusion on the masking, and I added a shade of brown on the occlusion. There just adding a couple more lights on the render and messing with the render settings to get a better BPR. It's similar to what I always do, but I decided to take this to another software for render. For the past couple of years, most of my renders were done in KeyShot. After, like, I would do one in ZBrush, like a BPR render in ZBrush, just to get halfway there, just to test the colors. And from there, I would export everything to, use the ZBrush KeyShot bridge and transfer everything over and do a better render in KeyShot. But I don't want to pay for another KeyShot update. My KeyShot has been out of date for a couple versions now. And don't get me wrong, it's pretty good. KeyShot's a pretty good software, but it's too expensive for what it does. And I've been using Blender now. And I'm working at Tangents, and Blender is their main software. And not just because of that, but actually it's quite the opposite. It's not because I'm working at Tangent that I'm using Blender. I started working at Tangent because I wanted to learn Blender fully, so I just decided to be paid for it other than learning on my own. And I was talking about other thing when I was doing the glasses there. So for the glasses I added same thing as I did for the teeth. I added like an insert mesh brush with a cylinder, extrude some faces using the Z-Modeler brush. And I'm not a really big fan of Z-Modeler, but it keeps me from leaving ZBrush to do simple things like those glasses, right? And I was going to sculpt the t-shirt. I was planning on actually sculpting, but I got lazy. It was like 2 in the morning when I was doing this, and I was like, oh my god, I just want to go to bed. So I ended up like just adding a sphere and try to fit the neck there, and like cutting with a clip, a trim curve over there. That's the most lazy t-shirt I've ever seen. Like adding another sphere for the shoulders, extruding that with the move brush and applying mirror and welds to have the same on both sides. Not the best, but it's gonna have to do it for now, because I was already pretty tired of working on this guy, and I don't want to put too much effort on something that's just an exercise, right? Here I'm using the ZBrush text plugin for the first time. I'm pretty happy they added that, because otherwise I think I would have painted that if it was a couple years ago before they added this. The one thing that was better when I was using keyshots than Blender to render things is the bridge makes it exporting much easier, right? You press one button and everything goes already with the polypaint information. I know there is a way to export things with vertex coloring, but I didn't want to, my computer is not too strong and I didn't want to export everything with like too high of a resolution. So I ZRemeshed the parts that I wanted to bring the textures from, and the part that had textures I also applied the auto UV master UVs and exported the textures just like as a JPEG, just so I had something. And here you go. I kind of skipped some steps there because I was exporting things for a few minutes. I don't know how, but the face already came with the material assigned. The eyes didn't, so I exported the textures for the eyes, and you saw me there flipping the UVs for the eyes because ZBrush is notorious for that, right? Every time you export the mesh, the UVs are upside down compared to most other softwares. I didn't do anything fancy with the materials, I just applied a little bit of subsurface on the face and played with the roughness and color of the other parts. And we're about to get to one of the main reasons why I wanted to use Blender and its cycles, the render engine. I had to use a little bit when I was working on NextGen at Tangent, and I was amazed. It was the only thing I liked about Blender at the time. Now I really love Blender after they released this version 2.8, but at the time was 2.78 we were using at Tangent at the time, and I really hated it. I could not get over the right click navigation, and I didn't want to change to the Maya settings because every time I looked up a tutorial I couldn't follow the same steps, so I kind of gave up and just powered through. But I really dislike it, especially the selection. Now I love it, and cycles with the real-time render, it's a better look than what Keyshot gives me, and you have like infinite possibilities, right? It's like true PBR materials, and I'm using an add-on called Gaffer. I think it's free, and it loads up like 300 HDRIs images, I think, over 300. They're all free images that you can find online, but just by the ease of use of having them all at once there, and you can just flip through some of them, it's amazing. It makes it truly comparable to Keyshot in terms of easy to use. Again, the only thing that Keyshot has on Blender for me right now is the one-click transfer of everything. Ricardo Lino has a slogan on his skating videos. He always says at the end, remember why we always start skating, and it's because it's fun. And I think I'm gonna steal that for me on this video. Remember why we always started sculpting, and it's because it's fun. So don't forget to have fun. Especially in personal projects, the fun can be taken away from you when you're working with clients, but you should always make your personal projects as much fun as possible. So that's it for today. I hope you liked this video, If you did, please click on like so I can know. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like the video, please let me know in the comments how to improve, because after all, we're all trying to improve. And have a good one.